I started looking at colleges beforehand, and I started to apply August, I guess, because that's when the Common App opens. But I didn't really start applying, like sending my applications in probably till like October, November, December.
If you're applying to college right now, keep up with deadlines. Make sure that application deadlines and scholarship deadlines don't pass by without you putting in your application. And make sure to not undersell yourself. You don't think about it since you're at Central surrounded by a lot of other like high achieving students, but you are a high achiever. You're doing some really great things, so make sure to talk about that.
I wrote down all of the dates and deadlines for every school that I was applying to so that I could keep track of what I needed to do in the future so that no deadlines would really creep up on me.
Make a list of all the deadlines and things that you need to apply for. Because personally, I know a lot of people who wanted to apply for a certain college or whatever, and then because they missed a priority scholarship deadline, they ended up not being able to afford that college, even though for some people it was like their dream school and they just couldn't do it anymore. Applying for financial aid, that stuff is really complicated, and there's different deadlines for like each school. So making sure that you have your financial aid deadlines, your college essay deadlines, and any priority like scholarship deadlines, all of those you should probably figure out like during the summer.
Also just kind of making sure in my applications I'm putting myself out there, understanding what people can look for, like what kind of things they want in an applicant.
It was very stressful because I felt like the college application process had all the work of another class, but I didn't have class time to work on all of that. So it was difficult to find time to write essays. And then when I started having to go to schools to actually audition, that was even more difficult because I had to miss several days of class to go to Michigan or Cincinnati. So it was really important to manage my time well and figure out what I needed to prioritize and what I needed to work on, while I was auditioning.
As far as applying for like scholarships and like college applications, just have a plan. Like I have a little app on my phone called My Homework, and I can put what I have to do in, what dates to do and stuff like that, and it just keeps me on track for what I need to do. Because if you let college deadlines and like a scholarship deadline sneak up on you, they will, and then you'll look up and oh man, that scholarship was due last night, and I just missed out on like $4,000, something like that. And then those little $1,000, $500 scholarships can build up into a lot of money over time. So those are pretty important. So I said, don't let deadlines sneak up on you. Stay prepared.
It was kind of a lot senior year, but you just keep up with your deadlines, keep your calendar updated, and just try and keep track of everything, and it ends up being worth it in the end. So senior year, that's what I did. I wrote over 20 college essays.
So when I was writing my essays for the Common App and for Amherst itself, I really thought about what I wanted to show the admissions office about myself. And so one of the main things that I talked about was my dancing, because it means a lot to me, and like mentally and physically. So I really divulged on what dance meant to me, how I felt when I was dancing, stuff like that, because I knew that that was the best way I could portray who I was and how I feel, how I think, to the admissions officers. Basically, when you're writing your essays, you want the admissions office to be able to read the paper and get a feel for how you would fit in on their campus, or if you would at all. And so I thought it was really important for me to show how I think about dance, which is both analytically and artistically, because that I knew was one of the aspects that a lot of colleges are looking at in students, because they want students that aren't just focused one way, but are able to adjust to their environment and adapt.
I think making sure you can really see my personality through my essays and short answers really stood out. I applied through QuestBridge, and it gave me a lot of short answer spots and the essay spots to really verbalize my story. And I think through that I was allowed to really see my personality, and the officers could really see who I was through my words.
So when I started looking at the writing supplements for colleges, I had a lot to do. So I started really, really early. I think I started my Common App in July, like my first drafts. And overall, I think I probably did 3 completely different drafts. And my first idea was not the idea that I ended up submitting to colleges. So I think it's really important to start early, and throughout all of the Common App essay and any additional writing supplements that I had to do, I just made sure that I was really genuine, because it's easy to try to present an image of yourself, to make it to try to fit in with what a college wants you to look like. But it's really important to tell stories in your essays that are really important to you and true to you.
One of the most important things about essays was what you write in your Common App essay, because most people will apply to the Common App so they can send their application to multiple schools at once, and then individual schools might have a writing supplement. I think that my Common App essay was probably something that stood out. I made it really personal and really emotional to just try to grab the admissions counselor's attention.
The way I write essays is kind of weird. I start off by writing my words out there. It could be horrible. I take it to teachers, my friends, let them read it. We work on it. It gets better from there. I spent about a month probably working on my essays. Just from September to October, really.
The way I wrote my essay was an amalgamation of all the things that occurred in my life and all the passions I had. And that was the best way to have the admissions officer know what kind of a person I am. It was my passion for math. The admissions counselor, a week after I learned I'd been admitted, she called me, and one of the largest things I garnered from that conversation was that she told me she wasn't a math person, but she said that the way I'd written about my passion, math, she had been inspired to go and learn more about math herself. And she said that would make me a perfect fit for my college.
For the actual application, I remember just, not only, pouring my heart into every essay I did, but also, every time I wrote an essay, I was always looking for ways to better it. I was never really just writing an essay just to get it over with. I wanted to make sure this was, the best representation of myself.
When you're filling out scholarships, you're gonna feel like it's pointless, and you're gonna feel like all the essays you're writing are pointless, and you're gonna feel like it's repetitive and it doesn't matter. But every $1,000 that you can get is worth every minute, and you should write all the essays you can to get as much money as you can.
Honestly, when I wrote my essay, I didn't really have a strategy. I was literally just putting what I felt on the page, which just so happened to coincide with going to MTSU and being a teacher here in Murfreesboro. So I didn't have a strategy going into it, but it very aligned with MTSU. So I was just being myself.
I think the biggest way that I revised my essays when I was going through the college process was through my sister. She's like 10 years older than me, so she knows a lot about applying to college because she had to do that herself. So I had her and the rest of my family read my essays, and that was probably the biggest influence. And the next biggest influence was definitely the writing lab. A lot of my friends were in writing lab, so it was really easy for us to just trade essays. So we'd kind of go in a circle with our laptops and just read each other's essays, and that was really helpful.
When you're applying to college, especially when it comes to decision time, just make sure you know that the decisions aren't personal. Even if you get rejected, it's not because you're a bad candidate. So I had a friend who got into Yale who got rejected from Southern California. I got rejected from Yale and got into Southern California. So it's really, there's a lot of randomness, especially at the upper tier of schools, so don't take any rejections you get personally. So what I did for financial aid is before I submitted an application to a school, I would look up their financial aid calculator. A lot of schools will have this, where if you input your grades, your family income, information like that, they will tell you how much other students like you pay, and that's a good indicator of whether or not you might be able to afford that school. There was one school that I was thinking of applying to, but after looking at their financial aid, I backed out because they basically didn't give any need-based financial aid, so I would have had to have gotten a full scholarship to be able to think of affording it. So fall of your senior year during college application time, teachers are going to basically be your best friend with letters of recommendation, because your application will not be complete without those letters. So make sure that you tell your teacher far in advance of when you're going to need letters, because everyone else is going to be asking them for letters of recommendation too.